We are being hypnotized by people like this. Newsreaders, politicians, teachers, lecturers. We are in a country and in a world that is being run by unbelievably sick people. The chasm between what we're told is going on and what is really going on is absolutely enormous.
Oh yeah, dude. There's some Nephilim shit.
It's like we all know what's going down, but no one's saying shit what happened to the home of the brave. These motherfuckers, they controlling us now, and no one's talking about how they made us try to be slaves. And everybody's just walking around, head in the clouds, who won't awaken to a dead in the grave. But then it's too late, we need to be ready to raise up. Welcome to the end of days. Everybody is slaves, only some are away.
He goes on to say that he believes, now correct me if I'm wrong, you actually watched it earlier and kind of saw it twice because we watched it before the show, that the UFOs and these aliens are Nephilim. But can you explain what that means? What is that?
Well, for the record,
Clint's a Nephilim.
Yeah, I am a Nephilim, but also for the record, I did not know even what the word was until about a year ago. My buddy TopLobsta, who's absolutely obsessed with the Nephilim, he has a show called Nephilim Death Squad. Him and Raven, they talk about the Nephilim all the time. What the Nephilim are.
We had them on the show here talking about the Nephilim, and then I think that was our biggest show.
Yeah,
I think we had like, what, 9,000 viewers watching live on that?
It was big time.
It was an interesting conversation because we were also able to tie it into Tucker Carlson that's been dropping little hints about this for a very long time.
Right. So what it is from the Bible, apparently there's stories of these giants that are the offspring of angels that have fallen to earth and human beings. And that's what the Nephilim are.
Guys, it's really nice to see my children talking about the Nephilim. These are good. These are our friends, like homies in real life. And we went on their show and we were just like letting them know about what was going on. And they're very political beings. So, Dave, do an intro, and then let's run into it.
It's fascinating to see the direction that the conversation is gone in. Welcome, guys, to another episode of Nephilim Death Squad. I am David Lee Corbo, a.k.a. The Raven. That is TopLobsta, the father of disinformation. And today we have two guests with us, two returning guests, actually, from probably two of our most popular episodes. Let's start by introducing Paul of Understanding Conspiracy, and then we'll get into introducing JTfollowsJC. Paul, can you let the people know where it is that they can find your work and what it is you focus on?
Sure, you can find me on YouTube under Understanding Conspiracy. I've been on there for about 10 years now, just getting involved in every conspiracy you can ever imagine, but I am predominantly known for the Nephilim looked like clowns theory, which we've talked about quite a few times now together, but I'm also known nowadays for sharing ideas surrounding probably what we're going to talk about today, which is that the millennial reign of Christ may have already happened. And it's a very contentious, fast-growing topic, which is capturing the imaginations of thousands of researchers. And you know how it goes in the conspiracy world. Every 4 years or so, there's a big topic that changes everything. It seems like this is the next one. So I'm also talking about that. So
You're talking about the little season, right? That's what that is?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, man, I just heard of that the other day, and I was like, oh, what the?
That's why I reached out to Paul, because shout out to MK Ryan. He's a big fan of both our shows, awesome guy, and he's been messaging me saying you need to have Paul on to talk about the little season, so I'm really glad we're going to get into that today. We're going to talk about a little bit of this Nephilim stuff, and then we'll move into it, but before we do, JT, can you let everyone know where it is they can find you and what your work focuses on?
Well, yeah, I'm on YouTube as well. JTfollowsJC. I'm on Instagram, TikTok, Joe Telford on Facebook. I'm kind of on all the social media apps if you look for me. I did a movie actually called Ancient Angels, which focuses on angels and Nephilim. So if you guys are interested in that, it's kind of actually funny watching that clip. Sometimes we forget, like when we get into this space, how little most people know about this. And so we kind of give a big overview of the topic, and especially if you have people in your life who have no idea, like they have to explain. In the Bible, angels had sex with women and they produced giants. Like the people who have never heard that, you send this to them and they'll find like, oh, that makes sense. And so
one more time, what's the name of that documentary and where can they find it?
It's called Ancient Angels. Obviously, it's a play off Ancient Aliens, where everything that we can't explain is explained by aliens. We do almost the same things that we say, angels, Nephilim. I mean, but it's more true to the stories, like, because those guys say, well, maybe these guys were just too primitive to know who they were dealing with, and what they called gods were actually aliens. Obviously, we say, no, they were gods. They were sons of God, as talked about in the book of Job and Genesis 6.
It's interesting how, like, you just basically covered the same thing that Tucker Carlson is covering, but Tucker does it in this trepidatious way because he's from the mainstream media. So he's like, this is going to sound really crazy as I say this, but I thought he put it kind of eloquently. And I have a clip pulled up. I'm not sure if this, it's like a 15-minute segment where he goes in. I'm not even sure he names the Nephilim, but he describes them in detail. And let's just play that so you guys could hear this, because it's like it's a strange thing to see come almost full circle, where the talking head that, you know, was breaking down like Russiagate on Trump and kind of telling the truth at the time is now doing this thing. So like where do we put this as conspiracy theorists or human beings in general? But here's the video.
You truly don't want to know any more
Nope.
about it.
I think I know. I think I know what's up. So I can't prove it, so probably not going to articulate it, but I think I know what's up, yeah. But
Can you articulate it?
well, I think it's a really old story. I think it's a really old story. So that's what I think.
What is it?
Well, one, I'm a Christian and I am fairly sincere about it. I try to be sincere about it. More sincere than ever, for sure. But one thing that you notice about every world religion I'm familiar with, I'm interested in that topic, there are commonalities between religions. Jesus is unique, and I believe in Jesus. So I don't believe in any kind of pantheology, okay? I don't think they're all equal or anything like that. I think mine is correct. I think that. Sorry. But there are commonalities that are very striking between all world religions I'm aware of and all creation myths. And one of them, and this is of course true for Christianity, very true, is that the belief that supernatural beings take physical form. They all believe that. The Greek myths, Jesus, most famously, but that they take physical form, that they're not just like some ethereal, they're not just shadows floating around, specters, fog, that they're physical. Like they're as real as the arm of your chair. And that they reproduce with people. Again, Christianity believes that. Jesus, immaculate conception, spirit reproduces with human woman. That's what the story is. And it's described in Genesis as well, in Genesis 6. But again, it's not just the religion of the ancient Hebrews or the religion of the modern Christians. It's Hinduism as well, and the animist religions, the religions of, to the extent we understand them or know about them, of the American Indians, all the same. So if every culture in the world that we know about, who's left any kind of written or physical record, is reaching the same conclusions about something, maybe there's something there.
Huh.
Right.
Fascinating. My initial, I'm trepidatious. You use that word to describe his approach in this conversation. And I've come to be pretty comfortable with the idea that Tucker is into sort of Kabbalist, Jewish mysticism, and he's famously pictured with the red Cabal bracelet. Mm-hmm. And so I find this fascinating. I don't know how you jump from that to saying that I'm a Christian, I believe in Christ. I don't know that I would disagree vehemently with anything that he said there. You might be able to get him on some semantics, maybe in the way that he described things, but not in a way that I would feel, comfortable being an authority speaking on and correcting him. So it's just interesting because he didn't really say, you'd have to watch the entire interview, which I guess was on the Sean Ryan show. I'm sure it's a damn near 2-hour long interview, but this isn't the first time that Tucker's done this. And I got to admit that it's almost given me pause, because if it wasn't for, especially having done this show, collecting this large body of evidence from all these people, you guys are amongst those as previous guests. We've done, I don't know, probably closing in on 40 episodes, most of which are you know, the biblical lens being what you would use to see our modern day existence and conspiracy theory and all these different things through. So we're well familiar with the topic, but still hearing Tucker Carlson present this on such a large stage as the Sean Ryan show makes me go like, oh, where am I going? What am I saying? Because why are my thoughts now in alignment with him? And I think that we've said it a lot on this show, and I don't think that Tucker Carlson is beyond redemption. Who knows what he's had in his personal life? He may have had a shift. I don't know. That's just speculation. And you know, I don't think that he's beyond redemption. So maybe this is the truth for him, or maybe this is one of those things where it's like the best lie is one that maintains as closely parallel to the truth as possible. You want, in order to sell a lie, it to be comprised of 99% truth, and then you deviate on a very important 1%. So who knows? But I'd be interested in hearing, you know, everybody else's thoughts on really what do you make of Tucker saying this? Let's start with JT.
Well, you know, it's interesting. We actually did a show, you know, months ago when he went on Roseanne, and that's when, like, him and Roseanne, I think that was the first time he mentioned it. If he had, I hadn't heard it before. And my buddy, a friend from high school, actually sent it to me, knowing this kind of stuff I talk about on my podcast. And I was, so a lot of people came at me and said, oh, don't you know he wears the red bracelet? Don't you know that he's not one of us? And this is controlled opposition. It's all the things. And I said, that's probably true. I mean, that could be true. But it's still significant that he's saying this publicly because he, you know, he's a serious person. Obviously, certain, you know, if you're the wrong political persuasion, you don't take him serious. But like most people would consider, he was just literally on Fox News not that long ago. Yeah, as you said, he's talking about like major political issues. So the fact that he's saying this, for one, most of the things that I've heard him say regarding this topic, I think that he's mostly right. I mean, again, like, yeah, you're talking about the small nuances of how he phrases things. But I have wondered when he was just on Rogan and he was talking about that aliens don't come from outer space. He was saying they come from inside the earth and the ocean. And I was like, he's really saying like something that's biblically true would be like that, you know, like if you like think about the biblical cosmology, you have the water, the deep is connected with the underworld. And like, if he's talking about spiritual beings, yeah, what he's saying is correct. So the real question is, why is he saying this now? Yes. And I think I guess that's the thing we won't really know. But I mean, I think it's awesome, honestly, that he's talking like this because the things we've been talking about, that have remained on the outskirts of TikTok and you know, and YouTube and podcasts is now like, I mean, it's becoming mainstream. And I think it's interesting for sure. I mean, you guys can, Paul, what do you think?
Again, I don't want to assume malevolence. I'd rather assume ignorance before malevolence. I hope he has our best interest at heart, but I remember your video where you were showing his talk with Roseanne Barr, and I made my own video kind of after listening to it, kind of asking these questions, like, why is Tucker Carlson, of all people, saying the word Nephilim? I know this is somebody with a huge following, you know, so it's influential, and I've heard about the red bracelet thing as well, and I've had many comments thrown at me saying the exact same thing. You can't trust this guy as far as you can throw him, or controlled opposition. And again, that's probably true. I mean, realistically, that is probably what's actually going on. But I'm gonna keep watching, and I'm seeing more. He's saying more and more things more often. And again, I can't really fault anything he's saying. What he's saying is completely biblical and matches up with what we've been talking about for so long. And I couldn't help but think of the phrase of, you know, they will give us our leaders. That's how the controllers work, you know. They will give us our figureheads, our talking heads. They will control the opposition. And it is kind of true in the sense that, is this like a soft disclosure? It's kind of like a coup. They're taking over our talking points. They're taking them and controlling the thought processes behind them through trustworthy, soft-speaking characters who have been home names for so long, like Tucker Carlson. People got warmed up to him already, and it's kind of like, we trust him. He has our best interest. He's one of us now. He's free from the system, you know. It's that kind of thing. So when he talks about these things, and we should listen to what he has to say. And I'm waiting for him to take the information, then start steering it in that direction where we don't want him to go with it. That's got to be coming eventually. So let's sit back and see if that does happen. But I don't know. I mean, this came off the back of the sighting that happened where there was like lines of police cars outside that shopping mall because everyone supposedly was seeing
Miami.
giants everywhere or something like that. You know, it's all kind of happening at once. So when these things happen, I think we have to take a step back as conspiracy theorist researchers and look at the big picture and the narrative. What else has been happening around this time? And it does seem like there is an externalization of the hierarchy situation going on. They're letting people know the truth now, slowly. They're just drip feeding out by Tucker Carlson saying the word Nephilim here and Roseanne Barr saying it over there, and a glimpse of the news, people claiming to see giants over here. Just little things like that happening every now and then, and it feels like they are bringing themselves out. And
the demon face, I don't. You guys remember that? That
yes.
was pretty significant.
Yeah, for sure.
Exactly, and that fit with my research perfectly because they literally look like big, giant, smiling lizard clowns. You know, that's what they were going for, and but. Why start releasing this information now? Well, you have to remember as well, Alice Bailey did write a book called The Externalization of the Hierarchy, which explains and talks about the coming of a world teacher in 2025. And she wrote this a long time ago, you know. And she's claiming by the time it gets to this point, the masses will have been initiated into the mystery, wisdom, occult level to what they want them to know in preparation for this world teacher to come onto the stage and start basically talking about Luciferianism, but masked as New Age philosophy. You know, and she is a Luciferian. She was there to create the Lucis Trust, as it's known today. She had a magazine called Lucifer. You know, this is what she did back in the day. And this world teacher that we're about to see on the stage, you know, it's probably going to be like a Jesus type character. It's going to be something similar, you know. And if that's just a year away, and now they're talking about highly spiritual biblical concepts like demons and the Nephilim, something's wrong. Something's weird. It's weird.
The juxtaposition of that, and if you watch the rest of, there's about 15 minutes of this interview where they're talking specifically about the Nephilim, and he talks about from 1945 till current day. And he's saying how spirituality is basically ignored and there's an op being run on us. Then he also does a little quip in there like, and I know a thing or two about running ops. It's like, yeah, you do. We know you do. You've been like, even though, you know, he's kind of telling us the truth in Fox News, it's still tainted with this, you know, whatever narrative he likes to push. But he's saying from 1945, the dropping of the A-bomb till now, there's been a denial of spiritualism or spirituality or the Bible or however you want to see it. And now it's almost like he's kicking that door open, or he's the guy that's just creaking it and just opening it slightly for people to come in. So if we are gearing up towards, I named the episode The Nephilim Return. It was just being a little cheeky and fun. But if we are gearing up towards this, does it start here? And does it have to, it does have to open up to the people. The people do have to be aware of what's going on, because there's going to be a lot of strange things happening in end times. Or, I mean, Paul, you might just come here and blow our minds and tell us that we're 1,000 years past end times.
What you mean, like, yeah? When Jesus was around the earth? No, but I want to go back to what Paul said. Though I think I want to change my answer to what Paul said, because what he's saying is, because I started to think about it like that. There's this groundswell. Obviously, I mean, again, I think all of us as who do this, it's easy to get tunnel vision and forget what, as I said, you don't really know what everyone else knows about this. But, I mean, I've had major big hit videos on these social media apps talking about Nephilim. All my friends have. I mean, so how many, like literally billions of people have heard about the Nephilim on TikTok, on Instagram, on Facebook, on YouTube? And then it's like, so there's this groundswell of increased knowledge and awareness of this topic. And maybe somebody says, we need to get out ahead of this. We need to get our guy, we're going to stage a co-op of this. And then we are going to lead it, because you have a lot of people who know just a very little about this. So obviously Tucker Carlson and even us, we'd say, yes, I haven't heard him say anything really wrong yet. But then maybe one day he does start saying things that are wrong. And by then it's like, who are they going to believe? Paul from Understanding Conspiracy? Are they going to believe me over Tucker Carlson? It's like, this guy is obviously well respected, and he knows what they know, and he's got a better voice. And I agree with him on his politics too.
We talk about on this show very often about how there's no such thing as an effective organic grassroots movement since God knows how long ago, that hasn't been co-opted by some intelligence agency. As soon as it becomes viable and promising, they're going to co-opt and steer the movement. You might look at this Nephilim narrative. Certainly we were inspired by not only the evidence for their existence, but also previous content creators who were talking about these things in such a compelling way that this story clicked and settled in pieces of a puzzle so effectively that it was like, it's time to start talking about this. So in that way, and then of course the at least for our show, the rapid fan base that it's developed is certainly indicative that this resonates with people. So I would imagine that, yeah, this is something that they'd want to co-op. My thing, and this is just speculation, but I always kind of imagine that, especially with what I would consider an alien deception, that they were going to try to take these. This seemed like the simplest path. They were going to take these ancient biblical adversaries of humanity, and they were going to rebrand them as benevolent space beings who are highly technologically advanced, and for some reason have a benevolence that makes them interested in us not destroying our own planet, destroying one another in mutually assured nuclear destruction. And so they were going to intervene on behalf of mankind out of sheer benevolence and no other reason. And that was a very compelling way to take these entities and, like I said, rebrand them. Now, I look at what Tucker's saying and I'm going, well, this is, I got to admit, this is a little left field. This is, I don't think you can effectively do that anymore if you start to call them Nephilim and people begin to understand that these are ancient biblical adversarial entities. Then they're not going to trust them. The only thing that I almost see left on the plate, if you were going to deceive people with this, and this is only in my limited thought in this moment, is that you're going to cue people into a Luciferian idea, that they were justified, that the fallen were justified, and that God is wrong, and that the rebellion against God is actually something to be looked kindly upon, and that these spirits should be, because I guess when it comes to, we talk about on this show all the time, it's consent, right? Especially when dealing with these spirits, these entities, consent is everything. Can you consent to something that has been falsified? In other words, if I present you a proposition, but I've lied in the fine print, are you truly consenting to that proposition? Maybe they have to tell you their nature in order for you to truly consent. So maybe the goal is expose them for what they truly are, but then let's work a narrative that you want to be on the side of these entities so that your consent actually matters.
It's not really a narrative, but like you see throughout the Bible, Moses goes up, gets the 10 Commandments, comes down, they're worshiping something else. It's not because they just decided to stray away from God, but that something else was giving them something.
And that something else didn't trick them. It didn't need to trick them.
It was Moloch. They built the cow. They know what it is.
Can I give you a biblical story that I like to bring up in this situation? Is the story of Balaam and was it Balak? And so Balak the king, when they're going into Canaan, he wants them to curse the Israelites, but Balaam cannot curse what God has blessed. So he tries like 3 times. He ends up blessing them 3 times. Later in the story, what he ends up doing is he ends up tricking the Israelites into worshiping Baal of Peor. And so it's a thing where, like in the book of Deuteronomy, and obviously they even have like, we're going to be blessed if we do these things, and we're going to be cursed if we do these things. So what he got them to do was to curse themselves. So they went to some kind of like, obviously sounds like crazy festival where they're having sex with like probably the temple prostitutes and doing all the things. And so unknowingly they worshiped Baal of Peor and cursed themselves. And they all got death for that. So they were tricked in a way. I don't think they knew they were intending to go worship another god. But what they did was they should have known better than what they did. They knew what they were doing was wrong, but they didn't know the level of sin they were committing. And I think that is why they were supposed to be vigilant when, yeah, they might be lying to you, but they're kind of telling, like, the warning signs are there for you're doing something that's not of God. And so when I was tricked, it's like the Faustian bargain. Oh, well, I mean, so the devil lied to you? Yeah, that's what he's going to do. So, like, you should have known better to make deals or accept deals from, the devil, basically.
Yeah, I imagine that there are varying degrees of, like we were saying, if consent is important, and you're lying in such a way that is, what's a lie that you might tell that is easily perceived as a lie, but if you want to go ahead and do this thing that is a sin, that lie grants you enough comfort where you're like, oh yeah, I didn't see through that. So I don't know. I mean, honestly, at this point in the game, it's all speculation, right? We don't know where this whole Tucker Carlson thing is going. But it is fascinating to watch it unravel because it wasn't on my bingo card. I was just gonna say that a possibility could be that there's still a wide swath of the population who's not going to fall for aliens because they don't believe in them. So what if you say, you just, again, like if we get into a semantic thing, like I guess go back to the ancient aliens thing. Oh, well, somebody calls them gods, somebody calls them aliens. Some people call them angels, some people call them aliens. Like, okay, so even us biblically would say that the morning stars, the sons of God, are not from Earth. So technically they are not from here. They're aliens. Right.
So we get into semantics. So, like, maybe the real trick is when something shows up, call them whatever you want. You're going to be afraid. Because if you're a religious person, you'll believe in angels and Nephilim. And if you're a science person, you'll believe in the aliens.
To me, I have a bit of a different take on all of this these days, in light of this new theory going around about the millennial reign already happening. And
oh, please tell us.
Are you sure?
Yes. Let's get into the meat of
Not
this.
so sure, actually.
Are you sure you want to hear this? I don't know. Because, we know there's been an agenda to program the masses to prepare for an alien invasion for over 100 years, since the War of the Worlds and all this. People were literally shooting at grain towers when that radio broadcast went out because they thought tripods were invading, because they legitimately believed it was a real broadcast saying aliens had been invaded. And it never stopped from there. There's been nothing but a barrage of alien invasion related media just bombarding us and bombarding every generation for over 100 years. They want us to believe aliens are out there and about to invade. But at the same time, we also know you can't really keep the cat in the box when it comes to the truth of demons and Nephilim in biblical history. So we're seeing these narratives where they're trying to control that now, and they're letting you know it's demons. It's not really aliens, And I think they're setting demons up to fail. I think the demons have a role to play in all of this, and I think they are going to reveal themselves, and they are going to be defeated, and that's their job to do that, to be defeated. That's kind of the point of all of this. And there will be a savior. There'll be something that saves us from the evil invading aliens. If you still stubbornly don't want to believe in the spiritual side of things, you'll stick to aliens. But if you are, like I said, Christians who believe in the Nephilim and demons, then something's going to come and defeat the demons. And most Christians are waiting for Jesus to return to do just that, and I'm sure there'll be a savior who will appear, who appears to have defeated the demons and established a new reign of some kind where it's peace and security and everything's wonderful, because all evil has been destroyed or something. I don't know, but
does this start to play into this idea of something that I'm pretty unfamiliar with, but I do see occasionally people who I respect because the information that they put out is considerable. I've seen this idea of a false sort of apocalypse, one that would be, and I haven't had time to look into it, but I find it fascinating. And now as you're starting to describe this, I'm going, oh, that's interesting. Could we have sort of a let's not even call it an apocalypse, but like you're describing, a false savior, almost a false flag event, right? Except it's a spiritual one. It's not a geopolitical one.
There's many ways they could play this card. This is the issue. I can't give you the definitive script of how this is going to go down. They have A to Z of scripts to choose from, and they'll pick whichever one works at the time when necessary, based on what went down and how people reacted. This isn't just a cut and dry. There's one plan here. They have multiple plans. They could just play at any moment, and all the programming for each individual plan has been laid out before us for a long time, and we've been in the game of decoding the media and finding the symbols and signs and the predictive programming, and what they're trying to do for us. And we know there's a transhumanist agenda in some way to merge mankind with machine, or in some way to develop a super intelligence through artificial intelligence, which will create some kind of systematic control or net over humanity where you can't break out of it. We know that's already well underway anyway, since Minority Report came out as a film, and prior to that, they've been building that, and the transhumanist agenda is clearly at play in cahoots with the AI agenda as well. So something's going on there. We know there's some weird black goose symbolism constantly being thrown at us, so they're working to do with programmable matter in some weird way, which will then shape reality and what we perceive to be something that it really isn't. They can meld reality to be whatever they want it to be. We know there's something weird and trippy going on with CERN, and we know there's something odd happening with reality itself when it comes to things like the Mandela effect, depending on where you want to go with that constant idea. Something weird is going on a quantum level where reality is malleable now, and it's not quite as cut and dry as most people would like to believe.
I would agree with that disturbing sentiment that somehow reality is more malleable. Yeah, that I would agree with that.
But that's what I'm saying. If you look at movies over the past 100 years, they've been pre-programming us with a lot of agendas and plays that cards they could play. They've been softly prepping our spongy brains with these ideas, so it's in there when it goes down. So we've already been pre-programmed to react the way they want us to react when those things happen. And aliens is a big one of them. But obviously, me and Joe have been talking about this theory, this idea that, well, if the millennial kingdom has already been established on Earth, and we can see remnants of that everywhere when you actually pay attention, it's what most non-Christians would call the Tartarian Empire. What we're doing is reinterpreting that as this is evidence that Christ physically reigned on Earth for 1,000 years. If that has already come and gone, which we can get into the details afterwards, but just to get this alien point out of the way, if that has already come and gone, then there is no tribulation event that's truly about to happen. That's already happened before his return over 1,000 years ago. What we're living in is a time called the Little Season of Satan, which happens just after the millennial reign ends. And if we're living in that time, whatever's about to come, it seems like they're prepping people for tribulation and Christ's return. But it cannot be that if it's already happened. But it seems like they're going to make it look like that's happening to the best of their ability. And the alien invasion is a part of that process, it seems. That's the card they're going to play to make it seem like in some way, shape or form we're stuck in some kind of biblical tribulation event. And the world saviour will appear, who's obviously a false saviour. This is what we're talking about here. This isn't good, but most people have been prepped to believe perhaps it's Jesus. Maybe they'll even fake a rapture event of some kind. I don't know what's going to happen, because even that's not a fully biblical concept anyway, the rapture, It only was invented in like the 1800s as a theology, but futurist doctrine, which is this idea that it's just around the corner, Christ is about to return, again, is a relatively new doctrine, which was established in about the 1800s again. And and Joe's done some great work on this, so has Alpha Talked, and actually there's quite a handful of channels now, about 20 solid channels out there who have shown that around the mid-1700s, something weird went down.
It was a shift, a big shift. All the revolutions basically started then.
Everything happened, and if you look at the Statue of Liberty, it's quite literally Lucifer with the chains broken at their feet. And it's Independence Day. Was independence from what exactly? We're told the British, but was it perhaps freedom from the millennial reign? Was this that shift that happened in that mid-1700s, was it a shift in power because there was a vacuum left behind from Christ and his saints who would have ruled for those 1,000 years? Once they left, something had to fill that void, and there was a power struggle. all the revolutions, all the wars, all these things kicked off then, kingdom against kingdom, empire against empire.
Isn't it interesting in America that they had the Gadsden flag was like the thing, don't tread on me, the coiled serpent, when like literally in Luke chapter 10, Jesus gives the apostles the authority to tread on serpents and scorpions. And that's like literally the flag that we're shown that like conservatives put on their pickup trucks.
Guys, this is making too much sense.
But let's get back to the alien invasion story. Well, yeah, exactly. Well, let's think of the alien invasion. Now, that card now has a completely different light. Now,
I've got. When you're done, I've got the perfect movie segue. That's I can wrap that up.
But it has to be seen now in a completely different light. You can't just take it for granted that it's just some silly idea, or it's just some evil plan to the Antichrist is going to pull or something like that. I don't think so. I think we have to consider, where is Jesus now? Because it doesn't say he leaves necessarily or his kingdom ends. It's just that he kind of hands over the earth to Satan during that time.
Or he allows.
Yeah.
In Revelation chapter 20, like there's a 1,000 years, and I think the big distinction in the 1,000 years is Satan is bound for 1,000 years. He lets him out and he allows him to deceive. Jesus is still on the throne.
Yeah.
So we're on that belief that, but
yes.
So he doesn't. Right.
So this is after Jesus. There's been a trial. Jesus has reclaimed the birthright of earth, of humans. So this is his. But they still, that part always bothered me. It's like, so then you're going to let this guy still run free, but then after 1,000 years, then he comes back and
well, that's the question.
cuts
Why,
him down.
like, why? Yeah, I think that's what we said. A lot of us who have researched this, especially who believed the futurist view that all this stuff is about to happen. When you read Revelation 20, I said I always struggle with that. Wait a minute. So after Armageddon, they throw the beast and the false prophet in the lake of fire, but they take the devil and stick him in the bottomless pit, and then he's allowed to come out again. And I always thought, like, why doesn't he just throw him in the lake of fire too? And then how does he deceive the nations if Jesus is ruling like everyone thinks he's going to rule? And I think that's why we're asking these questions of like, well, if he deceives the nations again, maybe it's not as simple as everyone thinks it's going to be, because everyone is so sure that, well, I'm not going to be tricked. And it's like, well, he deceives the nations to make war against Jesus and the saints, an unwinnable battle. Like obviously he can't win. He knows he can't win. Like he knows all this stuff's going to happen, but yet he still tricks the nations to go fight against Jesus anyways.
Well, this is the point. Fighting against Jesus is the actual end game of the Bible of Revelation. It's after the 1,000 years, Satan's released. He gathers an army after deceiving all of the nations to make war with the camp of saints. That's what it says. Now we're starting to talk in the realms of cosmic battles here, beyond of biblical galactic proportions. Now we're talking about alien stuff.
I think Top's about to go to the same place that I'm about to go. Go ahead.
Maybe not, but what does this do? So if we're past the tribulation and we're past the first return of Christ, what does that do to the Jews? What are we talking about with these people here?
Oh, you want to go there? I would say that biblically that there's no Jew nor Greek, no slave nor free. No, we're all one in Christ Jesus. So that the people who try to talk about replacement theology, the covenants have been replaced. There's no way to the Father except through Jesus. So obviously the people in that land, whoever they're related to, they still need Jesus, and they're not God's chosen people when they're in open rebellion against him. I mean, I think that's the thing that's like the modern church is so woefully wrong about the things Jesus was saying when he was saying them. That's why when Jesus, like I said, I posted a clip on my my Instagram yesterday. It was like from the movie Jesus of Nazareth. And so when Jesus is telling the Pharisees, you guys are going to hell. Like, how are you going to escape damnation? You see these stones in this temple? There'll be not one left upon another. And he's saying in this generation, this is going to happen. Like literally, that's what Matthew 24 is about. The apostles say when. And so because of all the things, and obviously then he gets into the parables, how they kill God's son. What's God going to do? He's going to take their vineyard and he's going to give it to others. Like that's why he's saying that's the abomination of desolation, is that they nailed God's son to a cross, and then what happens after that? Judgment comes in 70 AD. All of the things Jesus said were going to happen happened. Then after that, you have the persecution of the early church. All the things happen. It's like that was the great tribulation that people are like looking for when they're saying, I wonder when there's going to be a one world government. There was a one world government back in Jesus' day. It was called Rome, right? That was the beast. I believe that was the beast. The harlot, the scarlet woman was Jerusalem. She's the one who was made desolate, was burned by fire by the beast who hated her. I mean, like all those things have happened. And I think that, so what we're seeing today, I believe that most of the things we're talking about this is the tail wagging the dog. So it's like putting out a carrot of some kind of future eschatology. Ooh, look, they're going to build a third temple. Ooh, maybe their Antichrist is going to go into it. Ooh, maybe this is going to happen. Maybe it's Nephilim, Tucker Carlson. Like he's kind of hinting at these things that could be end times things. When we're looking over here, when the real thing is like they're talking about stuff in the North Pole, like they're going to be World War III at the North Pole when like we get further into this. Like that could literally be where's Jesus at? He could be somewhere in the north. The Bible talks about the North Mount Zion. People tie that into the North Pole, Rupus Nigra. Like that's why our compasses point north and all the things. It's like that you're looking for certain signs, but that could be maybe why when it really is toward the end, people won't even believe it because they'll be like, wait a minute, an Antichrist hasn't been revealed yet. Where's the mark of the beast? This can't be the end because these prophecies have not been fulfilled. The gospel hasn't been preached throughout the whole nations. Even though in Colossians 1:23, it says that every creature under heaven has heard the gospel. Like, so literally in the Bible, it already says that happened. But people are teaching people in churches that, these things need to happen and then Jesus can come back. So if you see,
you're saying
so
missionaries
Jesus,
are a waste of time.
What's that?
Missionaries are a waste of time, and I agree.
Well, I think most people, I mean, obviously the best you can reach people is your own community. I mean, people still need to know, but the point is like that when it comes to certain things that need to happen, those things happen, and they happened a long time ago. Like, so I think that's the main part is like that when you see stuff that's so on the nose, like the red heifers. So like literally they're talking about the red heifers being sent over to Israel, and that's what caused the war in Gaza now. Really? The cows caused this war?
Well, wasn't there some representative of Hamas that said that part of the reason that they flew people in on paper airplanes was because of the red heifer prophecy or something to that extent?
Yes, that's what I'm saying. Like, doesn't that seem like it's a little bit on the nose where like...
I can get behind the idea, like, as you guys are saying this, the way I look at things as they unfold is like, oh, I see the poetry in that, and that would be, because if you start to look at the story of mankind as like the greatest story ever told, then you kind of go like, oh, okay, I could see that happening, right? So when you're talking about, especially what Paul mentioned before, which I found fascinating, was Tartaria being evidence of Jesus having already been here. That Tartaria has never, people find it fascinating, and I agree, sure, it's fascinating. It does nothing for me. Until you said that, then all of a sudden I'm like, Tartaria just became one of the most fascinating things to me ever, whereas before I couldn't give less of a care about it at all. It was just not possible. I really didn't. It just never resonated. People said, oh, you should have somebody that does Tartaria, have him on the show. Doesn't do anything for me. I'm not interested. However, that angle becomes entirely fascinating. I wonder, not to derail too much, but what sort of evidence have you found that supports this idea? Either one of you. I don't know which one of you guys has done more on this Tartaria topic.
We've both done a lot, and what I can do is I can just I can read to you the words of Jesus himself first of all. And just, this is the biblical evidence we have, the scripture we have, which basically explains that even Jesus himself was saying, I am coming back very soon, not in 2,000 years. So, first of all, these are the basics, okay? So, I'll just read to you a little thing here. So, Matthew 16:28, Verily I say unto you, there will be some standing here, which shall not taste of death, till they see the Son of Man coming in his kingdom. Now, that's pretty straightforward. You know, Mark 9:1. And he said unto them, Verily I say unto you, that there will be some that stand here which shall not taste of death till they have seen the kingdom of God come with power. So another perspective, same thing. Luke 9:27. But I tell of you the truth, there will be some standing here that shall not taste of death till they see the kingdom of God. Matthew 10:23. But when they persecute you in this city, flee ye to another. For verily I say unto you, ye shall not have gone over the cities of Israel till the Son of Man be come. So that's pretty sudden. That's not in 2,000 years. That's
like a thief in the night.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
That's within these dudes' lifetimes. Like some of these people standing here are gonna live to see this.
Well,
I mean, it's like it's obviously the implication that some of them will be dead before he comes back. So it's so when people try to say, some people will say, oh, he's talking about the transfiguration, which literally it's like the next chapter. They go up, they see a glorified version of Jesus, like he shows them, it kind of reveals what he actually looks like, and they'll say, oh, that's what he was talking about. But nobody's dead at that point.
No,
like that,
and that's not a king. That's not a kingdom.
No, it's not.
No, as well, and he's pretty clear with his language here. He repeats it 3 times in 3 of the different synoptic gospels here. This is not like just a throwaway comment. Romans 3:11 through 13, and that, knowing the time, that now it is high time to wake out of sleep, for now is our salvation nearer than when we believed. So right round the corner. That's Paul telling you. It's about to happen. Time is extremely short, right? This is not for a generation in the future. 1 Peter 4:7. But the end of all things is at hand. Be ye therefore sober and watch unto prayer. So, right around the corner in 1 Peter. This generation shall not pass till all these things are fulfilled. That's Matthew 24:34. This generation shall not pass till all these things be fulfilled.
All these things.
All of them. Matthew 23, all these things shall come upon this generation. Luke 21:22, for these be the days of vengeance, that all things which are written may be fulfilled. These are the days, not millennia, not centuries, not decades. These are the days. It's coming now. They're very, very immediate. It says here in Matthew 26:64, Jesus told Caiaphas that he himself would see Jesus coming in the clouds of heaven. He's telling this priest, you will see me come back with my kingdom in the end. You'll be alive to witness it happening. Now, if we go off the futurist eschatology, that all of that is just symbolic, and he was talking about us now living during the time of Facebook and Twitter and social media, and it's kind of, you're making Jesus out to be a liar, because he was not lying when he said he meant it. I'm coming in this lifetime. You will see me. The time is at hand. It is now. I have come to end all things now. That's why I'm here, Yeah,
was it even in the book of Daniel? So Daniel gets the end times prophecy, and Gabriel tells him, shut up the words of this prophecy until the times of the end. So when Jesus is when Jesus out there preaching in Matthew 24, he's quoting from Daniel. So shut up this prophecy till the end, and then Jesus is quoting from it. And then the book of Revelation, chapter 22, it says, do not seal up this prophecy because the time is at hand.
That's 22:10, yeah. And he also says at the start of Revelation 1:1, things which must shortly come to pass.
Yeah.
Okay, and obviously all the tribulation stuff we have is in Revelation. So the very first line in the book that these futurists are basing their futurist eschatology upon tells them it was shortly coming to pass during the time it was written by John in Patmos, It says here, Revelations 1:3, the time is at hand. Revelations 1:7, behold, he cometh in the clouds, and every eye shall see him, and they also which pierced him. Those who pierced him with the spear on the cross will also see him.
Yeah, maybe like the Romans and the Jews, like who did it.
This is something that I think is actually fascinating to your point, is that the narrative with Tartaria is that, the Tartarians were this advanced civilization, and any remnants of their civilization was destroyed in an effort to wipe these people from the history books. And when you consider the scale of the Tartarian Empire and how much work had to be put into destroying this entire empire so that nobody would notice it. You know, that to me is like, well, maybe, but if you go, somebody had a vested interest in hiding the evidence that the kingdom of God was here, like, okay, that is a much more, that's a task that merits the level that they would have had to have gone through. You know what I mean? Like, it's one thing to try to erase a people from the history books, and you go like, man, that's kind of a lot to do, and for what? We now know the Tartarians existed, or, you know, the Tartarians, we now know they existed, and to what end? What secret were they hiding that was so important that now that we know they existed, it's virtually changed nothing, right? Mm-hmm. But this would change everything. This would make this unbelievable deception that is coming down the pipe fall apart, right? Because if the evidence was everywhere that this already happened, well, then you wouldn't be able to trick people. So in order to, you know, for Satan to deceive people in these times, it's like, yeah, we have to wipe out this massive empire that was like, a lot of people who are into Tartaria would tell you this is the biggest empire that ever existed, or you know, as far as they've discovered to this extent so far. Who knows how much hasn't been discovered?
What does it mean? What does it mean when he says that God will rule with an iron rod for these 1,000 years?
Well,
like,
this is the argument. Like? Was he talking about a physical rule on Earth, or is it a spiritual one? And this is where a lot of Christians differ and argue about what it meant to have a millennial reign. And now there's a kingdom, an eternal kingdom, and then there's a millennial reign on Earth, 1,000 years. Now that's finite. 1,000 years, last I checked, has a beginning and an end. It starts with one, it ends with 1,000. It's not an infinite kingdom that goes on forever, everlasting, as the eternal kingdom of Jesus Christ actually is in heaven, but in the right hand of God, the throne of God. You know, they're two different things, and I think a lot of Christians conflate the two together, and they believe when Jesus came, you know, to establish his millennial reign, that was to establish an eternal kingdom, and that everything will be perfect forever once he comes, and everything's perfect, and there's nothing else happens after that. Full stop, done. Let's close the book. Let's not keep reading Revelation and see what it says in the end. A lot of people believe and have been preached that once Christ returns, everything's perfect forever, done. Nothing else happens, you know. But what the book tells you is, no, there's a physical rule of some kind in which the saints will rule for 1,000 years with Christ. There's a resurrection that takes place, and it seems like these saints are resurrected, you know, the martyrs for Christ, and it seems like there's thousands of them from what we're gathering. The number is quite large, but it's not in the millions. You know, it's a group that is enough to rule the earth and kind of be like bishops or generals for Christ in his kingdom. You know, they're just below him. There is knights, could you say? They're the ones that he has given authority over lands and places for, and you find all these cathedrals everywhere are named after saints, you know, primarily, and it's possible that those were the hubs where they would dominate and rule over specific areas on behalf of Jesus, who appeared to be, in some very literal sense, ruling on earth as a king, as a ruler, with an iron rod, not as like a voted in representative of humanity, as a ruler. You know, a despot, if there ever was one. Essentially, he is in control. He is in charge. He is the boss. It's his way or the highway situation. You know, it's not like oh well, you can do what you want and there's no consequences. I'm an easygoing leader. You know, this is Jesus come to establish his law on earth, and it's kind of, if you don't go my way, there's consequences. And we can read in other scriptures in there. I think is it Zephaniah? I can't remember, I've got it written down somewhere, but it's talking of a time where, you know, Christ will rule on earth and people will have to make pilgrimages to go and see him. And at least once a year, they'll have to go up to Mount Zion and pay respects to him as the king, as God, as king on earth. And those nations who do not make the pilgrimage will suffer extreme droughts. There are consequences for not going along with it. And we find vast swaths of the earth that are just tundra deserts all over the place. Is it possible these are the nations who didn't make those pilgrimages, and we're just seeing the remnants of extreme droughts for these times? He seems like he did have a physical rule of some kind. But then people argue, well, he was actually ruling from heaven in some kind of weird ethereal sense in Mount Zion. It wasn't, you couldn't actually see it, you know, and people try and make excuses. But from what the evidence is we seem to be uncovering is, no, this was a literal 1,000-year physical kingdom that was established on the earth. Infrastructure was built, canals were built, cities were built, which are magnificent.
Make no sense.
know.
They make no sense. And
Yeah, like they do
based
not
on
fit
what we
them. They don't. People with horses and buggies should not have built these.
So can I make
You
two
know.
points to that then? There are two things
Yeah.
that I want to say. Both of them contribute to this. One is the existence of these, these Gothic cathedrals, which all it takes is just a lie in regards to when they were erected. They have a geometry to them, and a structure is such that we've lost the ability to build structures like this. One of the most famous stories, regarding these Gothic cathedrals is that a woman who was recording the sound of the organ playing within the cathedral then took that music and plugged it into a resonance plate where you put salt on it, and all of a sudden the salt arranges itself into the same geometric pattern that the windows of the cathedral were shaped in. How do we do not have the ability to do that, although if you're talking about the kingdom of God, then all of a sudden that starts to plug in well. And the other thing that I think lends itself to this is I'm having like a little bit of a crisis as you guys are talking, because I'm like,
Yeah, me too.
I can see.
We're doing an entire Book of Revelation series. I was like, should we throw this thing out?
I'm just gonna throw it away. But
we
the
should,
other
we should
thing,
re-examine it.
I did warn
Re-examine
you.
it, yes.
I did warn you. I did try.
I mean, for us, it's fantastic. For the audience, I'm sure they're
people
having
mad.
strokes.
There's a
Oh,
lot of
yeah.
people, a lot of
Some
people
comments.
screaming into their to their radios.
Yes.
Heretic.
Yes, exactly. But the
They're
other
like,
thing
this
that
guy doesn't know what he's talking about.
he has no idea.
This show, the show Nephilim Death Squad, is like, if you have information, we want you to come and share it. And this is biblical information. I'm open to hearing it. If you change my mind, then screw me, right? But if
Then
you
good
don't,
job.
Then yeah, I mean, I'm enjoying it. So go
Well,
ahead.
you know,
David.
Raven.
Well,
one thing I want to go to. One thing
Go
you
ahead.
Said, oh, wait, you said you had one more thing. Go ahead.
Well, the other thing is that I, from where I'm sitting, recognize that it looks as though the elites, right, for lack of a better term, whatever the hell you want to call them, are manufacturing end times prophecy. There are things that are happening
Yes.
that are coming to pass that I recognize as being manufactured. Blatantly. And so I go, for a while, I kind of go, well, maybe there is this desire to almost be an accelerationist. Maybe if you can bring about the end times, then knowing when it can happen, or at least forcing it to happen, will give you somewhat of an upper hand, even though we know how the story ends. But like, this makes a lot more sense. You're manufacturing end times prophecy so that to the average person, it looks as though we are experiencing, the book of Revelation manifesting in our generation.
Right.
That
So they manipulate people through fear, right? So like, again, as I was saying with Tucker, it's like, so if you don't believe in aliens, well, I can make you afraid. You believe in demons, don't you? Don't you believe in fallen angels? Hey, we could do that too. So what I want to say, go back to one thing you said though, is that I'm on the same page with you. The mud flood, Tartaria, the old world buildings, whatever you want to call it, did not move me until it's the why that matters.
Mm-hmm.
So why would they lie about that? And I said, if you have looked into Tartaria or old world mud flood, the rabbit hole is deep, and it's obviously trying to piece this together is difficult. But what we know is there was something that happened probably late 1700s, maybe early 1800s. We're not really sure about the timeline, but it looked like there was some kind of cataclysm. That's why buildings are like buried. The first couple floors are buried. Sometimes it's like 6 feet. Sometimes it's like literally like there's like places like Seattle. There's like undergrounds. Atlanta, there's underground. All these West Coast, the timeline makes no sense around the West Coast.
Chicago as well.
Every city in America had a great fire. Like, you can look them up. They all burned down, but they all got built again very fast. The architecture makes no sense. And there was insane asylums back in the 1800s and 1900s, like, that we don't have anymore. There was 150,000 people in the insane asylums, 250,000 kids on orphan trains. And they say, what the people who believe in just the mud flood and don't believe what we're saying about this, they would agree with us that something bad happened that they don't write about in their history books, and they try to cover up. Literally, they're willing to burn books. They're willing to destroy buildings, like demo the best buildings you've either seen or never seen because they don't exist anymore. They were willing to throw people in insane asylums for religious fanaticism,
Right, and quickly to that point, why not, if it was just to delete the history of a people, co-opt the buildings and lie about the history? It's like, no, something about the architecture itself.
They've done that too.
They've done that, but I think on a large scale, if you left the footprint of what you imagine would be the grandiose level of Christ's kingdom, that would be a lot of explaining to do. You could explain away a couple of buildings, co-opt them, and say, no, this was Greek architecture, whatever. But that's something entirely different.
Well, yeah, but if you believe all the things that, like I said, you believe all the things they were willing to do to hide this previous, more advanced civilization, like, so what would they be willing to, like, what would they be trying to hide? And then, so you think about, what would be the biggest thing ever? What would make all the other conspiracy theories pale in comparison? The fact that Jesus came back, he had a kingdom, he had an epic, we reached a peak of civilization at some point, and now we're on the downward slope, and the controllers, the elites, they try to take credit for stuff, and the stuff that the advancements in technology are literally them just kind of re-releasing old tech as stuff that they created.
It's the biggest one, guys. It's the biggest conspiracy.
And then, like, why only 1,000 years? And then also, again, just to bring it back to the Jewish stuff, if this all already happened, the Jewish stuff doesn't matter. So this is just another op. Whatever's going on in Israel, because it does feel like an op at this point, especially. Like, we're being ginned up for really no reason at all. If this is not even on the table anymore, we're moving in a different
that's a
direction.
great point. You and I talk about it all the time. It's like, well, why are they suddenly allowing us to hit the apex of noticing? Why is it culturally being pushed in? Because it doesn't matter. But it's a red herring. It throws you. This is messing. Please go.
Right around the same time that they came up with the rapture theology that I don't believe is biblical, they came up with the support Israel no matter what theology, where, like, if you read your Bible, God didn't support Israel no matter what. Like, I mean, just read it. Like, so the idea that, like, if you find things that are unseemly happening with Netanyahu and his government, like, as a Christian, you're supposed to not talk about that. You're supposed to not care about that. You're supposed to not try to hold them to a certain standard like everybody else is held to. Isn't it kind of the perfect cover that if you know who established that nation in 1948, the families who established that nation, who own that land, well, isn't it kind of the perfect cover to do whatever you want? And then you have the evangelicals, you have the government, you have everybody else saying, calling, like, literally willing to call you a racist, a heretic, whatever else, if you don't go along it. Yeah, you support terrorism if you're not for this. So yeah, it allows them to do all kinds of things that the West will just not even look. And then literally they'll show college kids and say, look at these idiots supporting terrorism. Look, they're crying. They're getting pepper sprayed over here. And you're like, it's like, you guys, like, the people that think they're awake, they don't even realize that they're still asleep, because it's like they were awake during 2020, right? And they were awake during Ukraine versus Russia. But now they're like following the news lockstep, and they don't even realize it. It's like I said, it's them manifesting it. And like I said, when they start throwing in the red heifer stuff, saying, oh, the reason they're fighting is because they don't want them to build the third temple for the Antichrist to go into to declare that the end times are here.
It's almost as though, like, they're also trying to make it seem like prophecy is still being fulfilled, if you get what I mean. So it's like, the current nation state of Israel, when it was established in 1948, this is the promise made to Abraham that the fathers fulfill, that they're going to give the land back to them. But if you actually look into it, that was already done a long time ago. I've written it down here. In the Old Testament, in Deuteronomy, Joshua and Jeremiah and Nehemiah, it's explained clearly that King David and Solomon were in possession of the whole land up into the river Euphrates as promised to Abraham. They already had the land a long time ago.
They returned after Babylon. So they also got it back again in the times of Jesus, in which, like, they tried to wipe out the whole idea that the second temple period ever happened. And so, like, yeah, that's happened too.
But it's also, they lost it again after rejecting Jesus, and Jerusalem was destroyed in 70 AD.
To this point about
Wait, David, is it possible that we're missing 1,000 years? Like, perhaps, like, time has been
Oh yeah,
Like our calendar has been messed up.
Well, I think that's what people have really struggled. I think that a lot of history I'm not saying you can trust it, but it's before like the last couple hundred years. But it does seem like that some people are, they point out that there was a J or there was an I, and it wasn't really, they made it into a 1. They literally added 1,000 years, or some people say they took it out. I don't think it's quite that simple, but I do think that the timeline likely has been stretched out, because that's why like there's clear evidence of like things that like are straight up out of the book of Revelation that happened in the first century, but there's things that happen after the first century that sound just like the book of Revelation, like especially like I think in like 536. Go look this up when you guys get a second. The worst year ever, where like the plague happened, famines happened. Like literally, they were talking about 50 million people died.
Oh, the sun went dark for
18 months.
For 18 months. No, literally, every volcano went off. All land shifted. Millions of people were dying of the plague, and were literally seeing demons before they died. Like
it was literally like a third of the. I mean, like based on the numbers they give you about how many people lived in that year, it was like a third of all the population died of the plague.
Whoa!
But then you go to the 1300s.
That sounds like the Pale Horse.
We're told the exact same story about the 1300s and the Black Death and the plague. If you actually look at the recounts and the history of that time, the plague was the least of their problems. It was just one of the many horrible things that was happening during that time. All across the world, from China, where they say the plague came from through fleas on rats. But China, everyone was dying in China horrifically, and terrible things were happening, and famines and wars and just destruction and fire coming down. It was horrible everywhere. And you look at the description of 536 and then the description of 1300s.
Yeah, it sounds the same.
You realise, I think they're just talking about the same events, but they've separated it into two different parts of history and claim
by
that
800 years.
Well, the funny thing about the 536 though is if you look this up, they'll say that's when people believe the Dark Ages started.
Yeah.
It says
so. Like, so you think about it, like
light without brightness, like the moon during the whole year. Wrote Byzantine historian
there's a good YouTube video I'll send it to you where it said that there was a and so the Byzantine Empire starts, like, so the Roman Empire ends, and then this Christian Empire starts during the Dark Ages. Again, think about like when Isaiah, when it says, they call good evil and evil good, darkness light and light darkness. So the Dark Ages, that they created the grand Gothic cathedrals, all the crazy stuff in Europe. Yeah, that was a time of obviously just people not doing much, right? And then, but what if it wasn't the Dark Ages? What if it was the Light Ages?
But they literally call, of course, to invert it is Satan's agenda. And just to your point, Tom, you just read that thing about the it's like, how bullshit is climate change if at some point in history the sun went like the moon for 18 months or whatever kind of crazy crap. Unbelievable.
A question also, how are we measuring years in comparison to how they were intending us to measure a year? 365 days, we got leap years, we got all this kind of stuff. They're saying it snowed in the winter in China. The bubonic plague happened 6 years after this. This is crazy. I was not aware of this.
I would have never made it.
You know what? They also established in that right around that time, the current way we dictate the years.
Oh yeah.
I mean, isn't it kind of crazy that there was a time when obviously there was a small sect of Christians, right, and they were persecuted and everyone hated them. But then one day they decided they're going to make it the law of the land. You can't even be anything besides Christian in the Roman Empire. And then they said, we're going to decide to, if you guys aren't aware, they weren't counting down to anything back when before Christ came. But now they established a timeline where there's before Christ, and then there was AD, the year of our Lord.
It's insane. It's an insane proposition. Everybody was counting down.
And everybody in the world just went along with that around 500.
Mm-hmm. And plus, the Byzantine Empire lasted 1,000 years.
Yeah.
But you're not told much about it. The Dark Ages lasted 1,000 years. Officially, 500 to 1,500. And this is around the same time period where the Enlightenment began. where people were leaving behind the dogmatic Christian, backwards, keeping us down and suppressed, stupid way of viewing things, and now we're going through the scientific Enlightenment, Industrial Revolution route, where mankind is going to take control of knowledge and information and bring ourselves out of the Dark Ages and into the light. This is Luciferian doctrine. Okay, this is the beginning, and obviously
from dark to light, right?
It's inverting. They're inverting the truth. The truth is that the good times ended and the real Dark Ages began, and we're living in them.
You know, to your point too before about manufacturing prophecy with this red heifer thing, which Top and I covered pretty extensively. It's a fascinating thing to watch. You know, on this show, we always say like we're retarded. We're not gonna. If you believe us about what we're saying, you follow Christ, don't follow us. But they did Top. Am I not correct in like there was basically like a genetically modified operation, a different type of GMO to manufacture these red heifers. There was an effort put forth as if you can take a sort of technology.
Well, you can fool God. You can put a fish string around New York City, and that will be your home abode, and then you could do business inside of your home on the Sabbath.
So once again, they're just doing this. It's like even the red heifer thing, which gripped us and gripped the world for those paying attention, and then kind of just went away for a multitude of reasons. It's like at the base of it, there's a farm that they were trying to create perfect red heifers.
You want to know something crazy? I bring this up all the time, and nobody's really an expert on it, but I feel like there's something significant with the Boneyard, Alaska. This guy that was on Rogan. You guys familiar?
Oh, the man. Yeah, he dumped. Didn't they say that they took like how many tons, like 40 tons of mammoth bones, and dumped them into like the East River in New York City?
Oh yeah, well the Smithsonian, but the people who previously had owned that property that he bought in Alaska, they were like, hey, check this out, and they were giving it to the Smithsonian. They dumped it in the East River. But the interesting part is that he is like just burning through the permafrost with some water and finding endless mammoth bones. And then on the episode with Rogan, if you listen to it, he's like, well, if we found anything else, it would be illegal and the government would be able to come through and like seize the property. So if they're finding human bones, then it becomes an archaeological dig. It's not his property anymore. So he's not going to admit that. But in 5 square acres, I'm sitting on 10, not that big. In 5 square acres, he is burning through permafrost every day and finding more and more mammoth bones. Like when they find dinosaur bones, we don't know what these things are. They're huge bones. And they find one here, one there. Could it be possible that there was a battle or something that took place? Because otherwise, why would all these mammoths or huge things, whatever they are, go to this one small spot and then die there? It makes no sense.
Doesn't make any sense, dude.
Unless,
oh, God, you're right.
Unless this battle has happened already. And something took place here. Something significant took place in Alaska. Look, I don't know. This just
that's a good call. And with the other one is like, Paul, have you ever done any videos about the catacombs under Paris? You guys ever looked into that?
No, I just taken them at face value. Actually, yeah, just a bunch of dead people.
That is the weirdest thing. When, like you said, who stacked all those bones in that underground thing like that? Like
it stretches for miles.
It is so frightening. But it's funny as we were talking before about the mud flood. I was saying like this is what kind of blows my mind is like. When I was focused on Nephilim stuff, we were talking about like before the flood mostly, and then obviously we know there's Nephilim afterwards, but the real story of like the Nephilim is like this golden age, or which we would know is the days of Noah, which would be wicked. But so a lot of people as Christians who believe in creation would say, oh, well, the dinosaurs lived before the flood. Most of them probably died in there, and that's how they became fossils. But with this kind of new thought process, they actually say that like there's fossilized cowboy boots they found in a lake. It was like had somebody's leg in it.
I've heard stuff like that, dude.
So the fossils. What if the fossils are not that old? Because you know how fossils are created. Mud covers things very rapidly. There's evidence that mud covered stuff very rapidly everywhere in the world, and I don't believe it was Noah's flood. I believe it was something that happened way later than that. And it's like so. It's funny the way that the story goes. At least even the way the mainstream tells it. Oh, well, they didn't start finding dinosaur bones until 1800s. Well, maybe because there wasn't a bunch of fossils everywhere until.
That's a great way of explaining that, right? Because it's like, what did nobody ever dig before? And it's like, well, they just weren't there to find until a rapid mud flood happened.
Let me ask you, because as we near this time, it does feel like we're reaching, like we're reaching this culmination, this apex. Something's going to happen, and we've been saying the Nephilim are going to return. They've returned already. What happens here at the end? I know Jesus comes back and with a sword he slices down his enemies, but like, are we? Do you think we're going to see a replication of what happened before? We're, dragons. Literal demons,
like a theatrical,
giants.
almost like a theatrical version of it, right? Like it's going to take place, but it's not going to be the actual one, but it's going to convince us that we're somewhere in the timeline where we aren't.
No, I mean, I don't know. It might actually happen again. Like, I don't know what's left to fight. But is it just people?
In a way, you have to remember what Nephilim actually are. They are the disembodied spirits of giants. Okay. Now they've had many forms. I'm sure they had the original form when they were first born, where they were just tyrannical giants subjugating people before the flood of Noah. They all wiped each other out in horrible bloody battles as a punishment for the Watchers, who had to watch their own children kill each other for creating them. And then humans started messing with their own genetics and Nephilimifying themselves and merging themselves with animals, and then you get chimerid hybrids like mermaids and centaurs and all the other mythical creatures being created just before the flood. Then a flood comes. No doubt the mermaids lived through the flood. Probably wasn't a problem for those fish people. No problem at all. So humans who corrupted themselves made it through, but most of the Nephilim were dead. Then the Nephilim came back after the flood in a new form somehow through, and we can argue to the end of days how that happened, but we know it did happen.
Could have been the mermaids.
Maybe, but the giants were still around after the flood, and then they had that form, and then they were all killed through the culling of the lands of Canaan by Israel as they were reclaiming the Holy Lands for themselves as a promise to Abraham, all the rest of it. So, they all died, but then the spirits became demons, wandering spirits trapped in the earth. And no doubt, if you give them a body, they'll take it, and they're back in physical form. Kill the body, they're still stuck here on Earth as a demon. They don't go anywhere. They wander in dry places looking for any vessel to inhabit whatsoever. That's the nature of a demon. So even if they did come back just before Jesus established his millennial reign, as it was in the days of Noah, so shall it be in the coming of the Son of Man, as we are told, then yes, there probably was an event during the tribulation period where it looked like the Nephilim were back again, which is something you're obviously trying to talk about in your own series about the Nephilim returning. But then, once they're dead, they're still stuck on Earth again, just disembodied. It's an endless cycle for these things. There's actually no reason why they can't do it again today, but probably through transhumanist means. We're going to build a body for them with a perfectly working.
It's interesting though that to that point too, that so what it says after Satan is released, he deceives the nations again, and then he gathers them to war with Jesus in the camp of the saints. And it mentions Gog and Magog. What's kind of fascinating as Paul's across the pond, and if you've ever heard of London, not London, Londinium, the old Roman city that's literally like in the runs the financial basically power of the whole world is in this small sect of London. It was called Londinium. It was like a Roman city that never fell, and so they have this parade every year, and they call it the Lord's Mayor Parade, and they have these two like statues or edifices to Gog and Magog, two giants.
Two giants, yeah.
I mean, it's like when I learned that, I was like sometimes you think you can't be shocked anymore, but you're like, don't you guys know how the story goes? And supposedly, like the mythology of this was like some king subjugated these giants to protect like the Isle of Britain or something like that. And you're like, so is it possible that some of these things could be cyclical, and could there be giants again toward the end of this? Yeah, I mean, I guess the main thing is like, I look back at the days of Noah line. Some people have said this, and now I'm kind of more inclined to believe it. It's like when Jesus is saying is like that it'll be like the days of Noah when people were not aware, even though they should have been. The judgment was coming, because that's literally what he's saying. It's like the repeating theme is, I'm telling these people that this is going to happen. I said, when you guys read the Gospels again, just read how often they're talking specifically about judgment that's coming soon, and you need to repent. And so these people are living like there's no tomorrow. I mean, well, they should be there. There is going to be no tomorrow for them at some point, but they're living like that they got all the time in the world. And then one day it starts to rain, judgment comes, and but I think that that's like on the biblical timeline. If we are in the short season, it's similar in the way that some people would say, "Oh, all this biblical prophecy is happening. Oh, look, they're forming a new world order, a one world government." Well, that fits both kind of paradigms of like you thinking like an antichrist is going to run it. It's still they're going to be this combination of nations that are going to all do something bad together, and so some of those signs are the same. It's likely some kind of cyclical, tyrannical thing where eventually God has to step in, otherwise.
Well, that's what happens, isn't it?
Everyone will suffer. Yeah.
He gathers his army, Gog and Magog, and perhaps a good portion of that army is the Nephilim embodied once more in superhuman robotic bodies or something. Just speculating, wild speculation. Who knows? But they've returned physically again somehow to be a part of this massive army. And it says whose number is of the sands of the sea. Now that's more than the human population. Trillions upon trillions upon trillions of bodies here to make an army that large.
Maybe they gave all those evil spirits some kind of a form
to make it literally the number of this army at the end for the final great war against the Camp of Saints is unfathomable. It's not 9 billion humans, it's trillions upon multi-hundred of trillions, just numbers you can't comprehend. Can you imagine counting every grain of sand in our sea? Think about that. It's an impossible to comprehend number. But then when you imagine just how many of these spirits are around, as well as human population by this point in time, maybe it is an unfathomable large number. But then they make war with the Camp of Saints, and then fire comes down from heaven and just ends it. It's over. That's
something. When you get a second, I want to go back to I had a movie analogy, and I think this is going to tie it all together.
Sure.
Go ahead.
Oh, what I was going to say is, so think about it. So we'll go back to Tucker Carlson talking about aliens that are not really aliens. They're spiritual beings. Okay. Paul mentioned the one time about Satan's endgame. Okay. You guys know where I'm going with this. Thanos. So I did a bunch of videos, and of course in Ancient Angels, I talk about the fact that Thanos is really, he shows up, he says, I am. He's the most powerful being in the universe. His ship is called the Sanctuary. If you know, in the first Infinity War movie, he comes in, he establishes who he is, he says, I am, shows the glove, and his goal is to snap his fingers and make half of humanity disappear. He's trying to correct the universe, right? And so what happens at the end of that movie? He wins, right? Thanos snaps his fingers, half everyone, he wins. And so his goal when he wins was to rest, like he was supposed to watch the sunrise on a grateful universe because he won. And so then the second movie starts, Endgame, and they're like, well, where's Thanos at? You know where his daughter knew where he was. He's in the garden. So not only is his ship called the Sanctuary, but he rested in the Garden of Eden. And so what's kind of fascinating about that movie is that, like, what they tried to do, which I thought was kind of cheesy at the time, and now I kind of maybe gain a new level of understanding about this. They have to use the quantum realm in order to go change time. And they make a point in that movie to say, well, when you change time, it's not like the Terminator, it's not like Back to the Future, because the people's consciousness will remain the same. Things will be different, but they'll still have their own memories. And that's like, hello, the Mandela effect is what they're kind of talking about. It's like that we have, like, in Back to the Future, everybody's different when he gets back. But if it was like real, if time travel is real, they would show up and they'd be like, what the heck happened? Like, everything around me's changed. Obviously, Fruit of the Loom things, like the Monopoly Man.
Oh, that's fascinating.
All of the stuff. And so if you think about it, so if the first Infinity War is a story of Armageddon, because like literally at the end of the movie, they fight under a dome, right? They're fighting the last battle under a dome, and Thanos wins. The second movie, he shows up, and he literally says when they go to fight him again, obviously Jesus wins in Armageddon, right? Thing's over. So the only way they can win is they had to go back and change things, and so they go fight him again with everybody's back, and they're all coming through portals at the end to fight, to surround Thanos and his armies. And what he tells them, he says, what I've got to do this time is I have to wipe out everyone and start again. Basically, after Gog Magog, what does God do? New heaven, new earth, everything's made new again. And like literally they say like that this the previous universe is not going to even remember because they're going to be gone. And it's like, so the whole story is like that. What if this idea of the aliens coming is like Thanos? So like we're presented this alien threat coming. So what if the people thought, hey, this is either fallen angels, this is some people actually think it's really aliens. And it's like a lot of people picture New Jerusalem, which it mentions in the book of Revelation, that descends down. It's like some people believe it's a floating city. What if, just like you see in like movies like Independence Day, this thing shows up in a cloud, and the last thing even Christians in the pews would think is this is actually Jesus, because they would say, well, it can't be Jesus because there haven't been a third temple yet. There's been no Antichrist. The tribulation hasn't happened. Mm-hmm. So what do we have to do? We have to band together, as Ronald Reagan said once, famously. We got to put away our differences. We got to go against a common goal. We got to save humanity. We got to rally around this cause. We need to surround this thing and make war on it.
Oh, my God. That's the most disturbing
twist. Yeah. Twist to a twist.
And but guess what? That if you go to fight against the alien, you might actually be going to make war against Jesus himself. How about that?
So whatever happens, guys, pray for discernment. Ask Christ. Oh my God!
You've got to sorry, you do have to realize though that the idea that there's a city in the center of the earth is in every culture all throughout history.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Like, and the idea that it's a floating city is also extremely common. I mean, Alpha Talks is a great presentation, just going through every single civilization and their obsession with the center of the earth.
Isn't there one with the Vedic religions where there's like literally a city in the sky that just destroys the crap out of a bunch of things, right? Mm-hmm. Within the Yeah, and
the thing is, this is the point. It's been there since the millennial reign ended. Jesus never left. He just went to this place in the middle, you know.
Mm-hmm. Wasn't there a Marvel movie where like they pick up an entire city and they're going to drop it on a
right? That's in the Age of Ultron, right?
Damn it!
Gosh, we got to use that clip. That's a good call, man. Even you know, it's funny. Even Ultron, he shows up. You know, he does like the crucifix pose. You know, when he's talking.
Yeah.
In the speech. I mean, this stuff is not.
I got to go back and watch it all. I just want to. There's something I want to run by you guys. You spoke before, Paul, about Satan amassing an army, right? This is you mentioned it several times during this episode. Top and I are very much into testimony of people who have had supernatural experiences, and what you'll find is that these people often have through line patterns in their experiences that one person will have in common with another, although they have no connection to one another outside of their stories. And we actually interviewed someone who I know we're trying to get back on. I'm not sure if we're making any leeway on that, but he claimed to have been abducted and upgraded for a coming war. And I won't go through the details too much because we've talked about it ad nauseum on this show, but the point is that concept is something that we have heard a lot through supernatural paranormal testimony. But there are two types. One could be more deceptive than the other, but we'll put that one to the side. There is one that seems overtly like people are having these experiences in dreams or in visions where they are going to some sort of a cave and they're being propositioned by someone who is a malevolent entity to join their side for a coming war, almost like a recruitment process. And these stories are very believable if you can get past the fantastic aspect of them and realize that they all share a certain commonality. And to Jerry Marzinski's point, Dr. Jerry Marzinski is a clinical psychologist dealing with schizophrenia. One of the things that he said is that these people are being told they're hallucinating, schizophrenic patients. Hallucinations don't adhere to patterns. And yet Dr. Jerry Marzinski has boiled down about 23 reliable patterns that these schizophrenic people will experience. And so in that vein, I don't believe that these are just stories. I believe that once there's a discernible string of patterns, there's a phenomenon happening. And I wonder because of course we've already speculated as to whether or not this is Satan amassing his army and doing an actual recruitment process. What you guys, if you were presented with somebody that you knew and told you like, hey, this is what I experienced, what lens would that resonate with you in the same way?
Well, it sounds to me like they're trying to propagate the idea that there are good aliens versus the bad aliens, and the good aliens are working through humanity to help us ascend in our consciousness and connect with our spirit guides in the other realms, or whatever story they want to tell you. This is an old thing, you know, and they all kind of have varying similarities, but also vast differences. Are they aliens? Are they time travelers? Are they ascended masters? Are they spirit guides? What are they? Well, they claim to be whatever the person they're coming to will believe the most. So you know there's deception straight away by the fact that they're not honest about what they actually are, but the message is always the same. You take control of your own evolution, and often, like you said, we're here to help humanity for a coming war of some kind. Now, you have to remember, if that's the game they're playing, then they want people out there sharing their testimonies to propagate this idea that there's some kind of galactic war about to go down, and the good aliens want to help humanity against the coming bad aliens. And as the Thanos analogy came there, the programming is telling us that if something turns up that's out of this world and wants to destroy the world, then it's a bad guy. Okay. Mm-hmm. Now, at the end of the day, Jesus comes to destroy the world and create a new heaven and earth.
Yeah, I mean, he would be the bad guy if you loved this place.
If you love the world.
If you love the earth, the world and the things of the earth and the physical realm, and don't have your eyes on heaven and the things after this life, then yeah, Jesus is a bad guy. He's come to destroy. He's come to end it, you know.
For God so loved the world that he sent his only begotten son.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that you should have everlasting life, you know, and not perish after this world is gone.
Yeah.
You should keep your eye on the eternal kingdom, not the earth. Ecclesiastes makes it clear everything under the sun is vanity.
Right? Isn't there doesn't the Bible warn of being in the world but not of it?
Exactly. Yeah, right. It's like, well, if you love the things of the world, then the love of the Father is not in you. And of course, Jesus tells the apostles that those who would seek to save their lives will lose it, and those who are willing to lose it for my sake will find it. So obviously, that's the whole thing where like it's the flesh versus the spirit. So I think that like everybody wants to go to heaven, nobody wants to die. But I think as Christians, we need to be willing to die to get there, because what we're being offered is much better than this. And I think that's kind of the ultimate, I guess, show of like how much do you really believe? You know, because it's like if it's easy for me to sit in this chair comfortably and just chat with you guys and say I believe. But what if you really did have to go die for what you believed in? Because like you're literally giving up all that you have because you believe there's something more. But if you don't believe there's something more, well, then those are the people who are going to seek to save their lives in the end. And it's obviously that's the whole thing where it's like that. Some people would say, well, if Jesus is coming to do these things, well, how is he good? It's like because this place is wicked. You know, it's like like as we were talking about before.
Have you not been looking around?
Right. Well, you would say that when you hear stories about like child sex trafficking and all the things that we claim that we all believe what the elites do, we say, when is this place going to be made right?
Because then when it comes to be made right, a lot of us are going to be like, oh no,
right. Well, like I said, because at some point, God is not good if he's not just. And if there is because I think we watch the court system, especially in the States, and we say there's no justice here. So at some point, people are going to be crying for justice. It's going to come. And it's going to come, but it's like it's not in, it's obviously it's not in the form that people would like it to be.
No, not that kind of justice. I don't want that kind of. Whoa, slow down. I like
much cooler form of justice. It's like, is there another option?
Yeah, is there another option where I get to keep my mansion over here? Like, is that a place?
That is why people talk about the That's why people talk about that's why people are so in love with the idea of a pre-trib rapture. Is don't worry, I'm going to be gone. See you, suckers. Yeah. I'm going up to the wedding feast with Jesus, while the tribulation saints get their heads chopped off. I mean, like that's like literally what you hear people talking on like TikTok. Oh well, guess what? The eclipse is coming, therefore the rapture is coming, therefore I don't have to deal with this crap anymore.
But if you think about that, that's silly because the story tells you, well, if you do end up being beheaded for my name's sake, you will rule with me for 1,000 years. So wouldn't you want to be on earth and sacrifice yourself on behalf of Jesus to be able to rule for 1,000 years in a resurrected, perfected light body?
Well, you should. You're correct. You should want that. But those kind of people really don't read their Bibles because they don't have to read that part of Revelation, Paul, because they're gone before that happens.
I don't have to deal with any problems. The sad thing is,
that never happens.
Friend of the show, Ed Mabry, actually has a theory about all three being true, pre, mid, and post, where it's just 3 different waves. And he goes through, I believe it was some of his justification for it was, well, there's biblical scripture to back up a lot of it. That's why there's so much contentious argument between these 3 things. And there also has been a couple of raptures throughout the Bible that just happen. So who's to say there's
that weren't
be only
called
one more?
raptures? Like the terminology rapture is never used, but rapture
Like
just means
supernaturally
to...
moved.
Yeah,
that's all that it
supernaturally
means.
moved or removed. And so if you look at instances in the Bible of people being supernaturally removed, then there is precedence for this kind of thing happening. Although there's no, the word rapture is something that was,
Our theory, me and David's theory, that's like set in stone, and I will not hear anything about it. Yes, there will be a pre-trib rapture, and that's for the Down syndrome and the mental.
Yes,
they're gone
the
right
actual
away.
innocent people, the actual innocent
Get them
ones.
out of here, and then let's start fighting. But I don't know. I have no clue.
Well,
But now
I think biblically
there's
there's a resurrection, and I think that's why I think there were people that there was no word for rapture. I mean, a lot of people get it from 1 Thessalonians 4:17 when Paul talks about those who are alive and remain will be caught up in the clouds. But I almost feel like that what it could have said, because he says that the dead are going to rise first.
Right.
So I think what he's really trying to say is, don't worry, the dead are going to go before you, but then you are going to die and you are going to go after them. Because even in 1 Corinthians 15, he mentions like that a seed doesn't go into the ground and become a new thing until it dies. And so he's saying that is, again, even think about Jesus saying that a servant is not greater than his master. He's the first fruits of the resurrection. He shows us what it was like, is that he died and then he was resurrected. I mean, it's always about the resurrection. And I think overall, it's kind of like the main problem with the rapture theology is that you're putting your hope in, even if you believe in the pre-trib rapture, you believe in any rapture, if that's where your hope is, you'd have to admit at this point, really, I mean, of course, maybe you could say Enoch and Elijah, possibly, but you would have to say, no one's been raptured yet, so why are you putting all your hope in that? Right? What God is really offering you is eternal life. He didn't say you won't have to die, because it actually says, there's many scriptures that say it's appointed for every man to die once, and then there's, but we don't want to take part in the second death, which is the lake of fire. So God is offering you life after a resurrection. And so people are trying. So that's why I think many people would really be upset about what we're saying, is because, well, now the rapture is not coming. And it's like, well, again, did your parents die? Did your grandparents die? No. So did they not get to experience what you're hoping for? So was their hope in Jesus in vain? Of course not.
It's not just that, though. A lot of people also are banking on that they get to rule with Christ for 1,000 years in some physical, weird sense. Like, I get to be a king over everybody. I get to rule with Christ over everybody else. But again, from what I can tell, is the first resurrection of those who were beheaded for his namesake, and obviously Abraham's bosom, and then those who, his boys, his main guys, they get to rule with him as saints for 1,000 years as the leaders in the already resurrected, perfected body. The second death has no power over these ones. It's done. It's kind of like their judgment's already sealed, and they are already in the level they need to be, and it's fine, And then, but there's still people around that are going to be ruled, who are just people,
right.
During the millennial reign. And this is who is being ruled over. And these people are not perfected humans. They're just human like the rest of us, and are still sinning and still making mistakes, and need to be taught how to live in a kingdom ruled by Christ. And that's going to take time, So everything wasn't perfect during the millennial reign, but it was definitely the best it's ever been for humanity in any way, shape, or form. And it was just got better and better and better as the 1,000 years went on, as these cities were built and these and people lived longer. It says, people like children at the age of 100 during this time, they had longevity about them, probably because all these cathedrals were actually healing centers in some way. The water they were drinking was charged with healing powers. It was nuts, and people people didn't need money. They didn't have to work to survive anymore. Everything was in abundance, and they had
free energy. I think that's
free energy. Yeah,
you guys would be. I would highly recommend looking into the work of Ed Mabry. He does our Revelation series with us. You would be fascinated in his theories about discovering that the speed of light, as a mathematical equation, he's discovered that is actually degrading over time. That it's not a constant, and that the degradation of the speed of light is actually why there may have been a time where human beings lived a lot longer and could commune with God more effectively, because in his opinion, light and the spiritual realm are intrinsically connected. And so if the speed of light is degrading, that would be pulling us further away from God. And also, since the electrical synapses between molecules is how our atoms communicate with one another. Well, if the speed of light is slowing down and those electrical synapses are light, then the communication between our atoms is slowing down, and it's actually like degrading our own physical forms. It's actually very fascinating. He's a biblical theologian, and I would love to see you guys communicate with him because he's very open-minded.
On that idea, I think it's the second law of thermodynamics is that everything's in a constant state of decay. Nothing is actually ever getting better. Everything is always degrading.
The opposite of evolution.
Which is true if you just look around. It's terrible.
The opposite of the Big Bang and evolution and everything they try to teach us.
But it's possible. Well, first of all, it proves that everything must have been created all at once and then got worse over time, not progressed to get better. So you're right. But it's possible during the millennial reign that even that was reversed. People got better during entropy ended.
I think that is actually something he would agree with.
Yeah, but once Christ left and went further away from us, God got further away and his kingdom ended. We got back into this state of shorter life. Everything got worse and illness crept back in and everything got worse. He's not there.
Everybody, I think we can agree at this point who've lived a little while, things are not getting better.
No. Rapidly, actually, we've hit an exponential pace right now. We're really sprinting towards.
I feel horrible. I don't know about you guys.
There's a funny meme that, of course, I say because I'm a kid of the '80s. I'm a lot older than you guys, but it was funny. There's in Back to the Future 2 was like when we watched that movie back in the day. It was like, oh, the future is going to be so awesome. Hoverboards, everything is going to be so great. And now it's like the meme was, no, hurry, let's go back to the 80s. And it's like, that's exactly what...
Yeah, we got to 2024 and kids are just lobbing their penises off.
Let's go back. But that's the funny part is like that it really is. It's like that in our short lifetimes, like things have degraded. And I said, I think instinctively when you kind of look in the old world stuff, and I even said like when you get into the sound resonance and the healing stuff, like I said, go into like a Gothic cathedral and like listen to a choir. And there's something like it's like it's even haunting, like in a good way though. It's like something about it makes you just stop and like what is this? And then meanwhile, like today, like listen to the stuff that they play on the radio, like rap music, for instance. It's like I obviously back in the day
Lil Nas X.
I mean, not even that, but I mean just like the mumble rap stuff. I mean,
it's horrible.
The stuff like this stuff is like it's not even music. And I used to think about like music. You remember hearing like musicians saying, we're going to change the world with our music?
They did.
I didn't realize how serious that was when you realize, like, again, like you have like Aleister Crowley is kind of like the push behind this movement in the 60s of rebellion. Like you find out like the megahertz, they changed the megahertz between like, it used to be 432 was like.
Oh, don't get top started.
I was wearing my shirt yesterday. I got to make 432 hertz great again. I saw some dude in the store. He's like, what's that mean? I was like, have a seat. Sit down right now.
No, but I'm saying, isn't it? I mean, like when you hear, like, you think that they're empty phrases by just some kind of hippy dippy musician. We're going to change the world. And then when the Beatles are putting Aleister Crowley on Sgt. Pepper's, their album, and then they're singing songs like Revolution, they mean it.
Yeah.
And like, so back in the day, music was about healing, and then it became about rebellion. It's almost like the devil is back, and he's got his anthem, revolution, rebellion.
We spoke with
go ahead.
Foundering. He's like a classical pianist, but he specializes in ragtime, and me and him were nerding out on chord sequences, and we were talking about the money chords, which is a 1-4-1-4-6-5 or 1-5-6-4, and then repeat. And I was like, well, why is that significant? He says, well, it creates this feeling of like you're going somewhere, whereas
Travel.
like the feeling of travel, of movement, of something happening, but nothing's happening. You're in like this dirty cup of water, and we're spinning the water. So it kind of feels clean, but after a while, you're really in a fish tank, and you get that murky smell. Whereas this older music, we're moving through keys and modes, and you're just, there's actual movement, and it's keeping things fresh, and it probably has something to do, it's probably affecting your soul.
Right.
When you're moving through time and space with this kind of, it's just all vibrations. So they've degraded that, and then they've degraded it to another level by changing the frequency, by then adding lyrics, and then talking about WAP and all this stuff.
Yeah,
it's the lowest form of music probably that's ever existed to mankind.
Well, it's
What's
magic
up, Rick?
at the end of the day.
We have royalty in the chat, guys. Rick Rakila, I don't know how to say his last name. What's up, man?
What's going on, brother? All right, so we have to bring this in for a landing because Top has to go. What I would like very quickly, because he only has a few minutes. This is the little season. If this is the little season, what comes next biblically? How does this end?
A war.
A war.
A huge, incomprehensible war. I'm not talking about petty skirmishes between humans with guns. I'm talking about of biblical proportions, cosmic battle in the sky, something incomprehensible that we've never seen before and will never see ever again. We're talking like something huge here. That's the end. And it will be a war we will not win. Let's put it that way. It's the end of all things. And then final great white throne judgment at the end of time before God, and that's where you better hope you were covered by the blood of Jesus kind of type of situation. But at the same time, we could argue about what the process will be from there, but we do know there'll be a new heaven and a new earth in a sense. Well, the earth will at least be renewed, because I think biblically speaking, the earth is eternal. It does go on forever. And he built it to be that way, but it's possible to be like a rejuvenation of the earth as we know it in some way. And there'll be the end of the Nephilim, let's put it that way. They'll be cleansed out of, they're like parasites in the earth that will be cleansed out of the earth. So we'll be able to actually live a lot more peacefully without those things around, let's put it that way, because they are a scourge since their creation, and most of biblical history is about dealing with that problem, and that will be the problem solved at the end. But that's not to absolve humanity of our own sins and our own problems and our own mistakes and our own pride and hubris, that also will be dealt with at the end as well, in however that goes. It's kind of, you just got to make sure you're on the right side when that time comes. But I've speculated on my channel how this is all going to go down, and I've tried to incorporate all the conspiracies into it. And it does make sense that it's the alien invasion card. We're going to see that happen.
The end game.
Yeah, we're going to see something like that. And it's going to be basically Jesus and his beloved city, his floating city, his New Jerusalem, which has always been there in the center of the earth. The cameras are suddenly going to switch onto it. Right now, they pretend it doesn't exist. No, you're not allowed to go there. All flight paths will avoid it. All boats will avoid it. No camera will ever present to it. People who travel there will never truly actually be going to the center, even though they believe they are. It's kept out of sight, but it's there. Never went anywhere. It's always been there, and it's presumably always will be there now for eternity, But one day the camera will get switched onto it, and all of our mainstream media will say, an alien spaceship has just appeared.
Or the evil Nephilim and the fallen have
or whatever.
arrived.
Everyone will have their own opinion on the matter, sure, but they'll say, look, this thing's just turned up. Or maybe it's, from what we can tell, magnetic north is actually moving towards Siberia, and it has been for about 200 years. It went from the other side of America, of the northern coast of Canada, and it's been moving across to Siberia. So it's possible people will start seeing it because it's coming close to land. And it's like, we can't hide it anymore, so now we need to point the cameras to it and control the narrative. And the narrative will be, huge mothership has just appeared from space. We don't know what to do. We don't know what it wants. And we've sent ambassadors.
Attack it. Everybody will say attack it.
Well, what will likely happen is that the mothership will do nothing because it's just Jesus. He's not there to do anything by that point. Just make his presence known, I assume.
The devil. The way it's written, the devil is the aggressor.
Yeah. Now we need to convince people to go make war with it. So how do you do that? Because it's a scary prospect, isn't it? A mothership's just turned up. What are we supposed to do?
A bunch of false flags that you attribute to it.
Well, let's release the chimeras we've made in the labs. Let's release the Nephilim robots we've released once more. Let's release the UFOs we've been building since the 40s. Let's make it look like this thing's attacking us. So it's likely they release everything they've built to make it look like humans are being ripped apart by monsters and aliens from this mothership, and UFOs are flying everywhere, destroying cities with lasers. And they'll say, the mothership did
going
that.
to be lit.
Yeah. It's like... They'll probably say, like, oh, all these things, these monsters, these beasts, these aliens, they came from the mothership. It's attacking us. When it did nothing. You know, it was all false flag fakery. But then we'll win. Something will happen, and a savior will turn up that will push back the initial attack, and then humanity will kind of recuperate and say, okay, we all need to drop our differences, we all need to band together and be as one, we're a united world, civilization and population, we all need to advance our own bodies through transhumanist means and become super marines of some kind, like Warhammer 40k style, I don't know, it's something, it'll all come together at once, and people will take a new mark and become new humans or something to go withstand the battle that's coming, and everyone will come together and make war. You know,
wasn't it Werner von Braun who actually said that they had all these kind of deceptions mapped out, and the last one was it was the alien card.
Finally, yeah. And to convince people to band together, you attack the people with supposed aliens from the mothership, and then you point the finger at the mothership. And
Right. Well, you know what's funny? It's like in all these situations too. It's like, even though, like I said, I was just breaking down that Fallout show. You know, there's this threat of nuclear war. Well, it wasn't the Russians who dropped the bombs in the game and in the show. It was the people dropping the bombs on. It was us dropping the bombs on us. And I think that's why, like, if you try to, it's another black pill. The whole, I mean, like, again, these things are kind of black pills in the sense that, it's not whatever they're trying to point you to. Again, like as we talked about Tucker Carlson at the beginning, he can say true things. Do not trust Tucker Carlson. Do not trust anybody who's got that big a platform. Read your Bibles. Obviously, like the stuff that we're most focused on, and the reasons that Paul and I have gotten here is not because of Taria. It's not because of Marvel movies. It's not because of any of these other things. It's because the Bible, actually, when you read it with the lens of the things that Jesus was saying to the people he was speaking to came true, what are you left to conclude after that? And I think that's why we're asking these questions of, like, what could be next. And I think that ultimately, as Christians, what should be next, our focus should be being with Jesus in the place with no more tears forever. And I think that's why I can laugh about Thanos coming.
And the point,
Thanos.
but that's the point, isn't it? That is the true blessed hope. It's not that you get to reign with Christ for 1,000 years on earth. It's that
forever.
The eternal kingdom is around the corner. The true end is nigh. You know, when people walk around with those signs saying the end is nigh, they're actually a lot closer to the truth than I think we were led to believe. The real end is coming, not this tribulation and 1,000-year reign end. We're talking about the end, you know. And again, it isn't something that should be feared, as long as you understand the concept that the physical is not all that there is, and there is an eternal heaven which you can be a part of. And the fear only, no weapon formed against you shall prosper, doesn't just mean your body won't get hurt. It means they can't take your soul. They can't kill that. That's
they can't bless what they can't. They can't curse what God has blessed. Right?
Exactly.
Well said.
That's the end game, man. And also, obviously, another extra caveat: the good aliens will turn up and try and help us to fight the bad aliens as well. You know, and they'll probably push back the initial attack. You know, where the demons are everywhere in the UFOs. The good aliens will turn up and fight back and destroy them and push them back. But it's just a show,
and
like it always has been. You know,
Tony Merkel's been dealing with a lot of people. Again, we're bringing in for a landing, but yes, because Merkel has been dealing with a lot of people, and it does seem like there's a lot of different sides to this war. Maybe these sides are fake, but there are people preparing on different sides, and there's factions. So I think you're 100% right. There's going to be a lot of confusion. There's going to be a lot of stuff going on. But as JT said, the reason we're all here, and the reason I'm glad that I'm here, because I kind of gave up on Christianity, on the Bible, like a while ago. Had some falling out with the church, but the church isn't Jesus Christ. I think Jesus Christ is in you. Read the book, understand who this guy is, try to understand who God is the best that we possibly can as human beings. And when the time comes, it's going to be a fascinating story. A lot of us will be fooled, but if you know who he is, you're going to be able to see his face and recognize him, whether this is the tribulation and the rapture or whether this is the final judgment. You're going to be able to know. So just get into your book. All this stuff is fun and it's great. It's great mental exercise and stuff I'm going to chew on, but I know for sure that what I need to do is pray.
Amen.
And try to really understand what this is, because I don't think, even though you have this stuff fleshed out, we still have no idea what this really will look like and how we'll even react when the time comes. So again, I'm going to bring it in. I'll let you guys do your finishing statements, but thank you for letting us host this. Once again, we didn't deserve to host. This is like a meeting of like two giant brains, and we're just like, tell us more.
It's like retarded
really
monkeys hosting a really banger show. Okay, can I just say really quickly, this has been very exciting for me because you often think about this great deception, and I go, well, I'm too retarded to see it coming, so I know what I'm looking at is more than likely not the whole picture. This just gave me a lot more of that picture, and it's incredibly exciting. It's always nice to hear something new. You know what I mean? So, guys, take it away. Let everybody know, too, before we close out. I know Top has it pulled up, your YouTube channels and everything, because this is where the gravy is.
Yeah, go follow this. Wow, 50,000. That's pretty good.
Crushing.
Yeah.
Awesome. Good
Killing
for you.
it.
Good
Yeah,
for you.
Go follow Paul.
That's it. Go to YouTube, guys. I've got everything's in playlists. If you go to the playlist section, I have a Millennial Kingdom playlist, and every other topic you can imagine is all separated there. And I don't know how many videos I've got now. What am I in there? 400, is it? 400.
Insane.
Yeah, it's getting out there, but there's a good chunk of it is on this topic. You can watch my entire journey when I first even started talking about it to now. And I'm just thinking out loud here. I'm speculating about a lot of things, and I'm just reading the scripture and trying to pass it out. I've networked with a lot of other voices in this, Joe being one of them. And it's great just to be a part of this figuring it out. And I'm not saying I have all the answers, but there's certainly some interesting points. I mean, one I never even got to mention is that, the Freemasons claim they built all these buildings. Well, it's possible they just took all the Freemasonry that was laying around after the millennial reign.
They built a lot of lies.
But there's so much more we could have talked about is what I'm trying to say. We have just literally just given you a taster of just how deep
I know
topic
how
can
this is going to go. People are going to freak out over this episode. We're going to run it back. We're going to do it again. So I'm glad that there's a lot more meat left on the bone.
Yeah,
So much more.
I would love to come back on, and I really liked what you said, Raven, that like admitting that you don't really know it all allows you to learn a lot more about this. And I think that Paul and I, as much as we have learned, we are still in that place, and that's why we approach these topics with a little bit of humility. That hey, we are trying to flesh these things out, and some people get mad at us for trying to think out loud in these scenarios. But I think that ultimately this is how we're going to learn, because it's like the wool's been pulled over our eyes, and we are just trying to be aware. But we're trying to be grounded in what God said first, and after that, it's kind of like I feel like in a time where you have to wonder how the devil could deceive the nations after such a great time. There's nothing off the table that we can't talk about. I think so. I think that's actually, it's like all the other conspiracies are legs of the conspiracy, like the one that like you can't even fathom how big it is. And I think that's why it's like everything has to be reexamined. And so I think obviously it's a blast obviously to connect with you guys. And I said I would love to come back and talk about it again.
Absolutely, and please go follow him on. Man, you get another couple thousand followers on there on Instagram. I know you've got a podcast and you have a link tree here. So if you go to his Instagram, JTfollowsJC, click the link tree, follow his YouTube. You're probably doing audio download stuff.
I'm doing. My link tree shows all the links, but I mean, I've been trying to focus more on YouTube lately. But like if you go on there, you can typically you can find like the podcast from YouTube, and I put them on Rumble eventually. I put them on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and you guys can listen to them. But I think I come from the video background, so I try to make sometimes I'm getting a little bit lazy lately. I try to make the podcast a little more visual. I try to flesh out them by the things we're talking about with pictures and stuff. So YouTube is the best place to watch. And obviously I connect with guys like Paul a lot.
And we're feeding Rumble too. We got Rick in the chat. We're feeding Rumble for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's where we want to live, guys. Go follow us on Rumble because YouTube.
Yeah,
is
I'm
gonna,
on Rumble. I'm on Rumble too. JT follows.
It's only a
JC.
matter of time until they ban us. I can almost guarantee you. I don't know when YouTube's gonna ban us, but it's coming. So go follow us on Rumble.
Probably.
Yeah,
with all
me
this
too.
stuff
I
stuff.
forget that. I'm on Rumble too, apparently. Yeah, I forget. I don't even upload, but I'm trying to get the backlog up, and it's taking a long time.
You have to, dude. You got to diversify where you are because once we get closer to election season, YouTube's gonna be ban-hammering you.
Rick, I'm calling you out. I see you in the chat. This guy is he's like one of the head, I don't know his title. He's like the head coordinator of Rumble.
Product development.
Product development. Yeah,
Well, Rick, help me out. Help Paul and I grow our channels on there because we would love to do. We'd love to do live streams on Rumble.
No, us first.
And listen, if you're following,
a rising tide raises all ships.
There you go.
That's right. If you're following Nephilim Death Squad, go follow Understanding Conspiracy. If you're following whatever, let's get incestuous. Let's mix it up. All right, guys. This has been extremely fun.
Okay.
And follow Rick at Rick Rack on X.
Yeah, go hit him up and he'll help you out. He's been super helpful with the whole Rumble thing, and I appreciate what they've done. They've given us like a real nice base to kind of like have some sort of stability.
And they're improving constantly. Like they're on a real tangent right now.
I do put the Too Hot for YouTube podcast over on Rumble, so I do appreciate Rumble for that, for sure.
Yes, it is live. Thank you, nevermarrieddating.com. All right, guys, let's wrap this up.
Yeah, thank you guys for coming on. I got to run. Follow me, TopLobsta.com, all that good stuff. You guys already know. Thank you. Any final words?
No, just,
Christ is king.
Yeah, Christ is. Yeah, amen, brother.
Amen to that. Yeah.
Amen. We'll see you later. Peace out, guys.
All right, God bless.
Bye now.
The greatest hypnotist on planet Earth is a oblong box in the corner of the room. It is constantly telling us what to believe is real. You can persuade people that what they see with their eyes is what there is to see. You got them. Because they'll laugh in the face of an explanation that portrays the bigger picture of what's happening. And they have.